I remember exactly the weight of the gun in my hand, the smell of metal mixed with her sweet perfume, them kneeling before me, trembling. My father crying, begging, my mother with that look. That same look I'd see every night when she came into my room. It was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. That night, after 17 years of being a ghost in my own home, I finally existed. And before the sun rose, I was already far away, with a backpack on my shoulders and the weight of everything they did to me stored in my chest. My name is Lucas. I'm 21 now. I spent 3 years in a juvenile detention center for threatening, extortion, and theft. I got out 8 months ago. Most people think they know my story. The troubled kid who threatened his own parents with a gun and robbed their house. That's what appeared in the local papers. That's what the judge read at my hearing. But nobody asked why. Nobody ever asks why. I'm sitting in this empty park because sometimes I need air. Sometimes the walls of the tiny apartment where I live now seem to close in on me. They remind me too much of the detention center. And the nightmares? The nightmares haven't stopped. I don't think they ever will. I'm not here for you to feel sorry for me. I don't want to be seen as a victim. I know what I did. I know I pointed a gun at my parents. I know I threatened them, made them beg, and I know I left that house with money and jewelry that wasn't mine. But I also know why I did it. And if you listen to my story to the end, maybe you'll understand. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll think I should have endured more, that I should have sought help another way, that I should have been stronger. I won't try to convince you. I just want to tell you what really happened, what nobody knows. If you're really paying attention to me, if you really want to understand what led me to that moment, like this video right now, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any stories like mine, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because maybe, just maybe, there's someone near you going through the same thing I went through. Someone who needs you to pay attention to the signs I'm about to tell you. Someone who's silently screaming like I screamed for so many years. And there's something that will shock you when I tell you. Something that not even the judge knew. Something I've kept just to myself until today. And you'll understand why I never told anyone before. I was born into a family that seemed normal, at least in the early years. My dad, Robert, was a salesman at a car dealership. He wasn't rich, but he made enough for us to have a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood. My mom, Diana, worked part-time as a receptionist in a doctor's office. I remember she always smelled of hand sanitizer when she came home from work. I have some good memories from my childhood. Birthday parties at 5, 6 years old with cake and friends from school. Christmases with modest presents that made me happy. My dad teaching me how to ride a bike at the park near our house. My mom making pancakes on Sundays. It was a common, normal life, at least until I turned 8. That's when my dad started working more. Sales trips, he said. Sometimes he'd be gone for days. I didn't understand at the time, but now I know he was having affairs. Several women in different cities. He wasn't discreet. Strange phone calls, messages on his cell phone that my mom eventually saw. The fight started. First just discussions, then screams in the middle of the night that woke me up. I remember one specific night. I was 9 years old. I heard the sound of glass breaking. When I came downstairs, my mom was sitting on the kitchen floor, shards of a wine bottle around her, crying like I'd never seen before. My dad wasn't home. She didn't notice I was there until I called out, "Mom?" And then she looked at me, but it wasn't my mother's look. It was something different, something that scared me. "Come here, son," she said. I went. She hugged me tight, so tight that I could barely breathe. "You'll never abandon me like he does, right? Promise, Mommy. Promise you'll always stay with Mommy." I promised, of course. What else would a 9-year-old child do? I didn't know I was sealing my fate at that moment. Things got worse gradually. My dad came home less and less, and my mom started drinking. At first it was just wine after dinner. Then it was vodka hidden in water bottles. She lost jobs, found others, and lost them again. She stayed home most of the time. I started noticing changes in her behavior. When my dad wasn't around, she'd call me to sleep in her bed. "I'm afraid to be alone," she'd say. I was 10, 11 years old, thought it was normal, thought I was protecting my mom. Over time, her hugs became different. Her caresses on my hair moved down to my face. I started feeling uncomfortable but couldn't explain why. I didn't know the name for what was happening. When I turned 12, my dad finally decided to stay home more. I guess he felt guilty, or maybe he was threatened with losing his job because of the excessive trips. I don't know. But he came back, and that should have been good. It should have made things better, but it only made them worse. The fights between them became more intense. My dad discovered her alcoholism. He threatened to take custody of me if she didn't stop drinking. She promised, stayed sober for a few weeks, and then started drinking in secret again. And that's when the night visits began. The first time I had just turned 13. I woke up in the middle of the night with her sitting on the edge of my bed, running her hand over my face. Her breath smelled strongly of alcohol. "Mom, what is it?" I asked, drowsy. "Shh, don't make noise. Your father is sleeping," she whispered. "Just came to say goodnight to my little man." She started to move closer. I froze. I didn't know what to do. She was my mother. You're taught to obey your parents, to trust them, to believe they know what's best. That night, she just stayed there telling me how I was becoming a handsome young man, how I looked so much like my father when he was young. Eventually, she left, and I stayed awake until dawn, confused, embarrassed, not knowing if what had happened was wrong or not. I tried to talk to my dad the next day. I started by saying, "Dad, Mom came to my room last night," and he interrupted me. "Was she drunk again? Don't worry about it, son. She's not well. Just lock your door." And he continued watching TV as if I hadn't said anything important. The visits continued, became more frequent and worse, much worse. She started lying down with me, touching me in ways that I knew were wrong, but I couldn't stop her. Sometimes I pretended to be asleep. Sometimes I said I was tired or didn't feel well. Nothing worked. When I turned 14, I tried to tell the school counselor. I couldn't say exactly what was happening. I just said there were strange things happening at home and that my mom was making me uncomfortable. The counselor called my parents in for a meeting. My mom cried, said I was making up stories because I was having problems at school, showed how my grades had dropped, how I was becoming isolated, said that I needed therapy, not her or my dad. My dad just sat there in silence, agreeing with everything she said. We went back home that day, and as soon as my dad left for work, she grabbed my arm so hard it left marks. "If you tell anyone again, I'll say you tried to attack me. Who do you think they'll believe? Me or a troubled teenager?" I stopped trying to ask for help after that. I stopped resisting the night visits. I stopped feeling anything. I became a ghost in my own life. I'd go to school, come home, lock myself in my room until I was called for dinner, and then go back to my room, knowing what would come after my dad fell asleep. The following years were a blur of pain and dissociation. I developed techniques to survive. I learned which nights she'd be worse, usually after fights with my dad. I learned to recognize the sound of her footsteps in the hallway. I started sleeping dressed in multiple layers of clothing, even in the summer heat. When I turned 15, I started rebelling in other ways. I stopped caring about school. I started skipping classes. I met older kids who offered me alcohol and drugs. I started drinking, too, ironically just like her. The alcohol helped me fall into such a deep sleep that sometimes I didn't even notice when she came. The relationship between my parents got even worse. My dad was almost always absent, and when he was home, he seemed not to see me. It was like I was invisible. He ignored the obvious signs: my isolation, my increasingly worse grades, my self-destructive behavior. I think it was easier for him not to see, not to know. One night, I came home after school and heard them arguing. My dad was yelling, accusing her of destroying our family with her drinking. She yelled back, "And what about you, with your women in other cities? You think I don't know? At least I'm here. At least I take care of your son." The word care made me physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. When I turned 16, I discovered my dad had a gun. He kept it in a box on top of their bedroom closet. I saw him putting it there one day when he thought I wasn't looking. I asked what the gun was for, and he said it was for protection. I laugh about that now. Protection. He had no idea who really needed to be protected in that house. I started having suicidal thoughts. I fantasized about using that gun to end it all, but something stopped me. Maybe a last bit of hope that things could change, that someone would notice, that someone would help me. By 17, my body had completely changed. I was taller than my mom now, physically stronger, but I still felt powerless. Years of psychological abuse had left me hollow inside. I couldn't confront her, couldn't just say no. The power dynamic was so distorted that even though I could easily physically stop her, I froze every time. But something was changing in me. An anger that was growing silently, not just against her, but against my dad too. Against him for not protecting me, for pretending not to see, for choosing ignorance. One night, something different happened. My dad had had a bad day at work. He was drinking too, something he rarely did at home. He and my mom had a particularly ugly argument at dinner. He accused her of hiding money, of spending too much on alcohol. She threw a plate against the wall. I just sat there, eating in silence, as if nothing was happening. After dinner, my dad grabbed another bottle of whiskey and went to the bedroom. My mom stayed in the living room watching TV and drinking wine straight from the bottle. I went up to my room and locked the door, as I always did. But that night, something told me it would be different. Maybe it was the way she had looked at me during dinner, that look I knew so well. I knew she would come, and I knew it would be worse than usual. Around midnight, I heard her footsteps in the hallway. She tried my doorknob, but it was locked. "Lucas, open the door," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. "I'm sleeping, Mom," I replied. "Open this door right now, or I'll wake your father." The implicit threat was there. If my dad woke up, there would be more fighting, more violence, maybe physical this time. I got up and opened the door. She came in, staggering slightly. She wasn't completely drunk, which was worse. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Your father doesn't touch me anymore," she said, getting right to the point. "For years. Did you know that? He prefers his women in other cities." She moved closer to me. "But you're my little man. You'll never abandon me, right? You promised, remember?" It was at that moment that something broke inside me. Something that had resisted for years finally gave way. "No," I said. It was the first time I said it directly. "What? No, Mom. This has to stop. What you're doing, what you've been doing all these years, is wrong." Her face changed. The loving mother mask fell away, revealing something ugly and distorted by anger. "Who do you think you are to tell me what's right or wrong? I'm your mother. I raised you. I took care of you when your father wasn't here. You owe me this." She came at me, but this time I didn't back down, didn't freeze. "I don't owe you anything," I said, my voice surprisingly firm. "What you did to me, what you continue to do, is sick." She slapped me hard. My head turned with the impact, but I didn't react, not physically. "I'm going to tell," I said. "To Dad, to the police, to everyone." Her face went pale. "Nobody will believe you. They'll think you're just a troubled teenager trying to get attention." "Maybe, but I'll try anyway." She changed tactics then, started crying, begging. "Please, son, I'm sick. I need help, not punishment. If you love me, you'll help me, not destroy me." It was the same manipulation as always, but this time I saw through it. I saw clearly what she was doing. And that's when I realized she was afraid of me now, of what I could do, of what I could tell. The power was shifting hands. "Get out of my room," I ordered, "and don't come back." She left, still crying, but I knew it wasn't over. The next day, she acted as if nothing had happened. Made breakfast as usual, smiled at my dad, asked me about school. But something in her eyes had changed. There was calculation there, planning. 2 nights later, I woke up with her standing at the foot of my bed. I hadn't heard the door open, hadn't heard her footsteps. But there she was, watching me sleep. Mom, what did I say? Shh, she interrupted. I didn't come for that. I just wanted to see you sleeping like when you were little. There was something in her hand. In the dark, I couldn't immediately identify what it was. Then she moved, and the moonlight coming through the window reflected on the object. A kitchen knife. You know, Lucas, she said in a calm tone that chilled my blood. I really do love you more than you can imagine, more than is normal. I know, but I can't let you destroy me. I understood at that moment that she wasn't there to abuse me. She was there to silence me permanently. If you tell anyone, I'll deny everything, she continued. And then, one night when you're sleeping, I'll have to do something I don't want to do, something that will destroy me as much as it will destroy you. Do you understand? I was terrified. Good boy, she smiled, putting the knife back in her robe pocket. I knew you'd understand. She leaned over and kissed my forehead. Sleep well, my love. After she left, I stayed awake until dawn, shaking. I realized I was in much greater danger than I had imagined. She wasn't just an abuser. She was a sociopath capable of anything to protect her secret. In the days that followed, I stopped confronting her. I went back to being the quiet, obedient boy. I let her think she had won, that she had intimidated me into returning to the old pattern. In reality, I was buying time, thinking about what to do. I tried to talk to a teacher at school without going into details. I just said I didn't feel safe at home. He suggested I talk to the counselor, the same counselor who had done nothing years before. It was a vicious circle. That's when I started planning my escape. I saved money from odd jobs after school. I researched shelters for teenagers in neighboring towns. I thought about all the possibilities, but there was a problem. I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough money, didn't have resources, didn't really have anywhere to go, and I was afraid. Afraid of ending up on the streets, afraid of the unknown. And then, 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, everything changed again. It was a Friday. I came home from school early because I wasn't feeling well. In reality, I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks, always afraid she would come into my room with that knife again. The house seemed empty when I arrived. My dad's car wasn't in the garage, which was normal. He rarely came home before 7 p.m., but my mom's car wasn't there either, which was strange for that time of day. I entered the house silently, as I had learned to do over the years. That's when I heard voices coming from my parents' bedroom, my mom's voice and a male voice that wasn't my dad's. I went up the stairs, avoiding the steps that creaked. Their bedroom door was ajar. I peeked through the crack. My mom was in bed with a man I had never seen before, younger than my dad, probably around her age. They weren't just talking. I backed away, shocked not by the scene itself, but by the hypocrisy, the lies, by all the guilt she put on my dad while doing exactly the same thing. I went downstairs and left the house without making noise. I walked around the neighborhood for hours, trying to process what I had seen, trying to decide what to do with that information. When I returned, it was already night. Both cars were in the garage. My parents were in the living room watching TV as if they were a normal family, as if there weren't corrosive secrets destroying everything from the inside. Where were you? My mom asked when I came in. Studying at the library, I lied. Until this hour? My dad asked, suspicious. I have a test next week, I replied, and went up to my room before they could ask more questions. That night I couldn't sleep. The puzzle pieces fit together in my mind. My dad's trips, my mom's alcohol, her lover, the years of abuse. It was like I could finally see the complete picture of our family's dysfunction. The next day, Saturday, my dad left early for work, even though it was the weekend. Another lie. He was probably with one of his other women. I was left alone at home with her. She was sober that morning, preparing lunch in the kitchen, humming as if she didn't have a care in the world. Mom, I said, entering the kitchen. I saw you yesterday. She turned around, confused. What? I saw you with that guy in your bedroom. The blood drained from her face. The knife she was using to cut vegetables stopped in midair. I don't know what you're talking about, she tried, but her voice trembled. I got home early from school. You didn't hear me come in. She put the knife down carefully on the cutting board, her eyes never leaving mine. What do you want, Lucas? I want this to end, I replied. All this theater, all these lies. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, I interrupted. You stop coming to my room, stop threatening me, or I'll tell Dad about your lover. It was the wrong thing to say. Her face contorted into a mask of fury. You really think your father doesn't know? You think he cares? He has his women. I have my affairs. It's an unspoken agreement. That's not leverage, Lucas. She took a step toward me. Instinctively, I backed away. But you know what your father can't stand? The idea that his little boy might be strange, different. Her smile was cruel. Now, if you tell anything, I'll say it was you who started it. That you've had sick fantasies about me since you were 13, that you tried to force me several times. And you know what? He'll believe me. I felt my blood run cold because I knew she was right. My dad would believe her. The world would believe her. A mother against a troubled teenager. There was no competition. So that's it? I asked, my voice almost failing. I continue being your prisoner until when? Until I decide it's over, she replied simply. Now get out of my kitchen, I'm busy. I left, but something had changed inside me. The last spark of hope had gone out. I was completely alone in this battle, and she would never stop, never let me go. In the days that followed, I pretended normalcy. I went to school, came home, had dinner with them, but inside I was decided. I had to get out of that house, had to escape them somehow. The night before my 18th birthday, she came to my room again. She seemed excited. Tomorrow's your birthday, she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. 18 years. A man. Yeah, I replied dryly. I'm planning a surprise for you, she continued, moving her hands toward me. Something special. The way she said special made me nauseous. I don't want anything special, I replied. I just want to be left alone. Her expression hardened. Still with that attitude? I thought we had gotten over this. She leaned in closer. You know what I think? I think you like it. You always have. You just don't want to admit it. It was as if something exploded inside me. Years of anger, disgust, fear, and helplessness came to the surface all at once. Get out of my room, I shouted. Get out and don't come back. I'm tired. Tired of your lies, your control, your disgusting behavior. She seemed shocked at my outburst. For a moment, she almost looked hurt. Then the mask fell again. You'll regret this, she said calmly, standing up. Very much. After she left, I knew I had reached the point of no return. She would do something worse than she had already done. Maybe she would carry out the knife threat. Maybe she would make up a story to get me committed somewhere. I couldn't wait to find out. The next day, my 18th birthday, I skipped school. I waited until they both left for work. Then I went straight to their closet, to the place where my dad kept the gun. The box was there, high on the shelf. I took it down, opened it. The gun was loaded. My dad, always so negligent, always so inattentive. I put the gun in my backpack and waited. I spent the entire day thinking, planning. There would be no birthday that night. There would be no special surprise. There would only be an end. When they got home around 7 p.m., I was ready. I had written a letter explaining everything, every detail of the years of abuse. I had addressed it to the police. It was in my pocket. I went downstairs when I heard them coming in. They looked normal. My dad was carrying a small cake. My mom, a wrapped package that I assumed was a present. Happy birthday, son, my dad said, looking genuinely happy. We have a surprise for you, my mom added, smiling that smile I knew so well. False, calculated. I have a surprise for you too, I replied. I took the gun from the back of my waistband, where I had hidden it. I pointed it at them. The shock on their faces was immediate. The cake slipped from my dad's hands, falling to the floor with a dull thud. Lucas. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted. "Kneel," I ordered, surprising myself with the firmness of my voice. They hesitated. "Kneel," I shouted, and this time they obeyed slowly, eyes fixed on the gun. "Son, whatever it is, we can talk about it," my dad tried. "Now you want to talk?" I continued, feeling my voice tremble with anger. "Now that I have this," I waved the gun slightly. "Suddenly you want to hear me out?" My mom, always the actress, started crying. "Son, please don't do anything you'll regret. We love you." "Shut up," I yelled, and for the first time in my life I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "You don't know what love is. What you did to me all those nights, that wasn't love." My dad looked confused, looking between us. "What's he talking about, Diana?" "She didn't tell you, Dad," I asked with a bitter laugh. "About the night visits to my room, about the things she did when you were sleeping or traveling to see your mistresses." His face went pale. For a moment I thought I saw a flash of understanding in his eyes, but he shook his head. "Son, you're confused, stressed. Please, put the gun down." "I'm not confused. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing everything clearly." My hand was shaking, but I kept the gun pointed. "You both destroyed me in different but equally cruel ways. Her with her disgusting abuse and you with your convenient blindness." "Lucas," my mom tried again, her voice more controlled. "You're having some kind of breakdown. None of this happened. It's fantasies." "Fantasies?" I interrupted. "Like your lover from yesterday was a fantasy? That guy in your bed when I was supposed to be at school?" My dad turned to her, shocked. "What's he talking about?" "She has a lover," I answered for her. "Probably several, like you. You're perfect for each other. Two disgusting people who lie, cheat, and destroy everything around them." My mom started to deny it, but stopped when she saw my finger tighten slightly on the trigger. "I came to say goodbye," I finally said. "And to tell you that it's over. All this sick theater you call a family." I went to the living room shelf where we kept the keys, still keeping the gun pointed at them. I took my dad's car keys. "I'm taking your car," I said, "and some other things I'll need." "Son, please," my dad begged. "We can talk about this, resolve this. You need help." "Help?" I laughed. "Where was this concern for the past 8 years? Where was it when I tried to tell you? When I showed all the signs? When I begged with my eyes for you to notice?" Keeping the gun pointed, I went upstairs to my room. I filled a backpack with some clothes, the money I had saved, my documents. I came back to the living room. They were still kneeling, exactly where I had left them. I went to their bedroom, straight to the drawer where my mom kept her jewelry. I took everything: necklaces, earrings, rings, things that could be easily sold. I also found a small box with cash. I took it all. When I returned to the living room, my mom was sobbing. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years in minutes. "This is our goodbye," I said, calmer now. I took the letter from my pocket and threw it on the floor between them. "This explains everything. Every detail of what happened in this house over the past few years. If you destroy it, I have another copy that will be sent to the police automatically if I don't stop it within 24 hours. It was a lie, of course. I didn't have another copy, but they didn't need to know that. I'm not going to kill you, although I've thought about it for a long time. Not because you don't deserve it, but because I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison because of you. You've taken enough years of my life already." I backed toward the door, still keeping the gun pointed. "Don't come after me. Don't call the police. If you do either of those things, the second copy of the letter will be sent. Understand?" Both nodded in silence. I walked out the front door, got into my dad's car, and drove away with no specific destination, just away from that house, from that nightmare. I lasted 3 days on the run. I made mistakes. I used my dad's credit card to fill up the car. I sold some of the jewelry at a pawn shop that required ID. I had no experience in running away, in being a criminal. The police found me in a cheap motel on the outskirts of a neighboring town. My dad had reported the theft of the car, the jewelry, the money, and the threat with the gun, but he didn't mention the letter or the accusations I made. When the police broke down the door of the motel room, I didn't resist. Part of me was relieved that it was over. I let myself be handcuffed and taken away. I had just turned 18, so I would be tried as an adult. During the interrogation, I tried to tell them about the abuse. The officer listened with a skeptical expression. He had already heard from my mom and dad. A completely different story. The story of a troubled teenager, possibly with mental disorders, who had threatened his parents and stolen their belongings. The story of a young man who needed help, not punishment, according to them. The letter. They had destroyed it, of course. It was my word against theirs. And who would believe me? The teenager with problems at school. The young man who had just threatened his parents with a gun. I was charged with armed robbery, theft, making threats, and some other minor crimes. My public defender got a deal. I would plead guilty and be sent to a juvenile detention center for 3 years, instead of facing a longer sentence in a regular prison. I accepted. I didn't really have a choice. The 3 years in the detention center were hard, but in some ways easier than the years at home. There, at least, the rules were clear, the boundaries defined. No one came into my room in the middle of the night. I had sessions with psychologists who tried to understand what had led me to that point. I told my story many times to different people. Some believed me, others didn't. Some suggested I was having false memories, that maybe I had invented the abuse to justify my anger, my violence. I learned to stop trying to convince people, to keep my truth to myself, to focus on my recovery, regardless of who believed me. During those years, my parents visited me only twice. Short, uncomfortable visits, full of heavy silences. My mom, always the actress, cried on both occasions, saying she missed me, that she wanted me to come home when I was released. My dad remained silent most of the time, avoiding my gaze. I refused the offer to return home, of course. When I left the center at 21, I went straight to a small rented apartment with the money I had saved working in the center's kitchen. Not much, but enough for a few weeks until I could find a job. I haven't seen them since then. I don't plan to ever see them again. I heard they got divorced shortly after my trial. I wasn't surprised. Without me as a shared victim, there was nothing holding that sick marriage together. I still have nightmares. I wake up in the middle of the night, feeling her weight sitting on the edge of my bed. Sometimes I wake up screaming. The neighbors have complained a few times. I'm trying to move on. I got a job at a diner. Nothing special, but it pays the bills. I think about going back to school someday. Maybe when the nightmares are less frequent. When I can trust people again. I still carry a lot of anger toward both of them. Toward her for the abuse, toward him for the negligence, for the convenient blindness. Sometimes I wonder if he really didn't know, or if he chose not to know. Which is worse? I can't say. I don't regret threatening them with the gun, taking what I took. It was the only way I found to escape, to break the cycle. Maybe it wasn't the right way, the legal way, but it was the only one I saw at that moment. Now I'm here in this empty park telling my story. Not for you to feel sorry for me, not to justify myself, but so that maybe, just maybe, someone who is going through the same thing I went through realizes they're not alone, that there is a way out. Hopefully not the way I found. I hope in a better, less destructive way. If you've made it this far and really understood what I went through, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are right now while you're watching. This might seem silly, but knowing there's someone on the other side, someone who heard me, who understood, who cares about my story, that means a lot, more than you can imagine. I don't know what the future holds for me. I'm trying to rebuild my life one day at a time. Some nights are worse than others, some days are better. It's a process. I'm learning to live with the visible and invisible scars. This is my story. The truth I was never able to fully tell until now.